The house was already warm when we arrived, the kind of warmth that comes from a long afternoon of cooking and familiar arguments. My dad's place always smelled like onions and citrus cleaner, as if he were trying to erase one scent with another. I held the door open while my son stepped in ahead of me, careful, both hands gripping the thin cardboard folder he'd decorated with stickers. He had spent weeks filling it, drawings of birds and houses, and a red car that looked like it was smiling. No one asked what he was carrying. My sister's kids were already everywhere, their shoes kicked into a pile near the door like trophies. My nephew ran past us and slapped the back of the couch, yelling something triumphant I didn't catch. My dad raised his glass from the dining table and called out that we were late, smiling like it was a joke he'd told before. We slid into the evening as if onto rails. I set the folder on a side table near the fireplace because my son didn't want to put it down completely. He kept glancing back at it, the way you look at something you're hoping someone will notice without your asking. Dinner moved fast. Plates clinked. Someone poured too much wine. Someone else corrected them. The talk stayed on safe things, work updates, a neighbor's new fence. My dad's stories from a job he retired from years ago, but still liked to narrate as if he were on temporary leave. At some point, my son edged closer to me and whispered that he wanted to show Grandpa his drawings. I said, "In a minute," because I was cutting chicken and because I knew that timing mattered here in ways I had never learned to predict. The fire had been lit earlier for atmosphere, not heat. It was mostly for show, a low orange shuffle behind glass. I noticed my nephew standing near it, holding a stick he'd pulled from the yard, poking at the logs through the open grate, like he was testing a boundary no one had set. Then it happened quickly enough that my brain took a second to catch up. He grabbed the folder. Not gently. With the same casual force he used on door handles and dogs' ears. He flipped it open, laughed at something only he could see, and before anyone said his name, he tore out the top drawing, crumpled it once, and tossed it into the fire. "No one cares about his stupid pictures," he shouted, loud and bright, as if he'd delivered a punchline. The room reacted before I did. There was louder, sharp, surprised, relieved laughter. Someone said, "Oh my God," but it sounded amused. My sister said his name in a tone that "Don't do that again, not what have you done." My dad laughed last, a softer chuckle, like he was approving a joke that went a little far but still counted. I looked at my son. He wasn't crying. He wasn't moving. His face had gone flat in a way that made him look older than he was, like he'd practiced this expression already. He stared at the fire, watching the corner of the paper curl, the red car turning black. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to. I took the folder from my nephew's hands without speaking and handed it to my son. He took it, closed it, and held it to his chest. "Hey," my sister said lightly. "It was just a drawing." I nodded once. I sat back down. My heart was doing something uneven, but my hands were steady. I didn't trust my voice yet, and I knew how quickly a raised voice could be framed as the problem instead of the thing that caused it. No one apologized. The fire crackled. Someone poured more wine. We left earlier than planned. I told my dad we had an early morning. He hugged my son and said, "You know how kids are." Like it was a universal law, not a son asked if the fire was hungry. "No," I said. "Fires don't get hungry." "Oh," he said, considering this. He didn't ask anything else. That night, after he was asleep, my phone buzzed. My dad's name lit up the screen. "Just don't come for Christmas," the text read. "You're causing tension." I read it twice. It was written in the same tone he used when he talked to contractors or customer service reps, firm, tidy, final. Tension was something that happened because someone let it. I typed back then, "So is the money." I didn't add anything else. I didn't explain. I didn't mention the drawing or the laughter or the way my son had folded in on himself like a page being turned too fast. The phone started ringing within minutes. I didn't answer. It kept ringing. Calls stacked up from numbers I recognized and some I hadn't seen in years. My sister left a voicemail first, saying there had been a misunderstanding. My aunt texted that Christmas was about family. My dad called 3 times in a row, then stopped. I set the phone face down and made tea. I watched the steam rise and dissipate. I felt strangely calm, as if I'd stepped into a quieter room inside myself. The money wasn't dramatic. It never is. It was an inheritance advance I'd been managing for my dad since my mom died, Funds earmarked for home repairs and long-term care. I'd taken on the paperwork because I was good at that stuff, which really meant I was patient and didn't argue about numbers. The next morning, I called the bank. I asked what would happen if I stepped back. They explained, politely officially, forms, delays, oversight, nothing punitive. Just procedure. By noon, the calls changed tone. My sister's messages softened. My dad's texts lost their edge. He wrote that he hadn't meant it the way it sounded, that Christmas was important to him, that we could talk. No one mentioned the drawing. In the afternoon, my dad called again. I answered this time. "We need to figure this out," he said, skipping any greeting. "This isn't how families handle things." I let the silence stretch just long enough to be noticed. "My son's drawing was thrown into a fire," I said finally. "Avery, was a joke?" he said. "You know how?" "I know," I said. "I know exactly how," he exhaled, sharp. "You're overreacting." "I'm reacting," I said. "I didn't do it there because it wouldn't have mattered. I'm doing it now because it does." There was another pause. I could hear him shifting, the small sounds of discomfort he used to think were private. "So what do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand that excluding us is not a neutral act," I said. "And neither is laughing." He didn't apologize. He said we'd talk later. We did, eventually. Christmas came and went in a modified form, shorter visits, careful conversations. The money moved to a neutral account with shared oversight. It took weeks. It was boring. It was effective. One evening, months later, my son brought me a new drawing. It was a house with smoke coming out of the chimney, but the smoke was blue. "That's not fire," he said before I could ask. "It's just warm air." I put it on the fridge. We are still not easy with each other, my family and I. Some things remain unspoken because speaking them would require a different kind of listening. But the rules have shifted, quietly. When someone laughs now, they check first who they're laughing with. And my son draws.